We like doing lists here, not only checking things off of them, but presenting you lists that open up a chance for discourse and debate about some of our favorite stuff. And David Cone has compiled many threads on social media that have gone viral in the good way, not the 2020 way. So, Cone, what list have you put together for us today, or what are we choosing from to let the audience know?
Well, it is December. I want to talk about the college football playoff. So I put out this thread on X. The college football playoff instituted a 4-team format, which lasted from 2014 to 2023, really until 2024 with this championship this past year. And I said, these are the 9 greatest games from the 4-team college football playoff era. So I didn't put them in any particular order other than I started with the games that actually went to overtime. And look, we can argue about what makes a game the greatest, but close scores, overtime, that's really how I was organizing these. I just want to list them off, and you guys tell me at the end, what is the greatest game? What's the most memorable game from the era that you remember from that time? First one up, 2018 Rose Bowl. Georgia defeated Oklahoma 54-48 in the second overtime. This was the first college football playoff game and the first Rose Bowl ever to go into overtime. Remember, this is Baker Mayfield. It's getting
closest Lincoln ever got, really.
Yeah, and Sony Michel with the direct snap, 27-yard touchdown at the end of that game. That was one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah, to me, that was like the microcosm of, now Lincoln Riley's dealing with different problems now, but that was the thing that Lincoln Riley could not get over. It's they could score a lot of points, even against a great Georgia defense like they had in 2018, but you could not stop people on offense, and that's what's cost them now. Heck, they're struggling in both while he's at USC, and hopefully he can get back to that, where at least they're winning 9-10 games a year.
Oklahoma scored on 5 of 6 first-half possessions, led by 14 at the half.
I can still almost picture in my head Sony Michel running that touchdown
at the end
to win that game. We're talking about a crazy football game from start to finish, and we're not used to seeing Georgia's getting absolutely diced like that for 4 quarters and still finding a way to win that game.
That shows you how good Baker and them were.
Had 26.8 million viewers. At the time was ranked the 5th most viewed cable program of all time. All right, let's go on to another Rose Bowl. This past season here, 2024 Rose Bowl, Michigan defeats Alabama 27-20 in overtime. Remember, we watched this game together. Michigan's down for most of the game, well, at least in the second half. J.J. McCarthy leads that fourth quarter comeback, forces overtime. Michigan stops Jalen Monroe on the goal line. Ends up being Nick Saban's final game coaching college football, and then Jim Harbaugh took off a couple weeks later to return to the NFL.
Yeah, and you talked about the coaches in that matchup that are obviously fantastic and both moved on in different ways. That was one of the few times where we've seen Alabama not be able to make the plays under Nick Saban in that big moment. Even in games where, and you brought it up, Alabama it felt like not dominating, but owning that game, right? They were setting the tone. It kind of looked like Alabama was just the better team. Then all of a sudden, Michigan, you look at that last drive that they had where J.J. McCarthy was able to take them down the field and they score. Alabama wasn't able to get over the hump, and I still remember Jalen Monroe on that last play in overtime. I think they tried to run him. They called a quarterback design run, and he got stuffed. I can't remember if it was an RPO or if it was a quarterback design run. That was a fantastic game to cap off. Obviously, put Michigan in the position to be able to finish.
And one of Blake Corum's greatest performances, Michigan running back.
Blake Corum was an absolute dog. Will we ever see a head coaching matchup like that again? Nick Saban against Harbaugh.
That's an iconic.
College, just Titans playing each other.
Well, it may take some time for some guys to build up a cachet, but we'll see something like that again.
That audience peaked at 32.8 million viewers, most for any college football playoff semifinal game. All right, next one up, 2018 National Championship. Alabama beat Georgia 26-23 in overtime. Boys, we remember this one. Remember Jalen Hurts struggling in the first half? Nick Saban decides to go with Tua Tagovailoa, freshman quarterback, in the second half. He throws multiple touchdowns, including the game winner to the future Heisman Trophy winner in Devontae Smith.
Yeah, and remember, unless I've just totally lost my mind, I think it was in the same year where Jalen Hurts had to come in for Tua during the SEC championship game to lead them that.
I think that was the next season.
That was the next season. Yeah, that's right. So this was kind of the coming onto the scene party for Tua. Obviously, that deep touchdown to Devontae Smith, 2 guys that are in the NFL right now. I just still can't believe that Georgia ran cover 2 on that last play and Alabama ran 4 verts. I think that was probably, and I think he would tell you, I think that was probably Kirby's worst call defensively. Probably his worst call defensively. I don't know why you would do it there, why you would take that chance, not just keep everything in front. But it capped off, another national championship for Nick Saban. And that's when it really felt like, man, I don't think Georgia will ever be able to get over Alabama. Kirby will never be able to take the moniker from Saban. Well, Kirby ends up winning 2 national championships, and Nick Saban's no.
And I think that was Kirby's first time facing Nick Saban. They were up 13-0.
Yeah, I was about to say. I mean, Georgia had a 13-point lead.
Yeah.
And, we're not.
That makes it worse.
And I know. And wasn't that play? Wasn't it 3rd and 26?
It was 3rd and 26, and I'm pretty sure that Georgia ran cover 2.
It was second. It was 2nd and 26.
Second
and 26.
They had just gotten
It was a
sacked.
41-yard bomb.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was literally like I was shocked that they guessed it was going to be some underneath throw to get it into 3rd and manageable is what I think they thought. But why? Why? I felt like you got there. You can get too cute defensively too.
All right, next one up here, 2022 Peach Bowl. Georgia defeats the Buckeyes 42-41. Remember, this is when OSU got in the playoff despite losing to Michigan at the end of the season, didn't make the Big Ten championship game. This was New Year's Eve. OSU led by as many as 14 at multiple different points in the game, but Stetson Bennett hit A.D. Mitchell for that touchdown at the end. C.J. Stroud gets the Buckeyes in field goal range, but it was wide left.
That's an awful kick.
The miracle at midnight, I think Georgia fans call it now. That's an iconic.
There was so many
game.
big plays in that game. I mean, look at the personnel that was out there on the field. And that was kind of a coming out party for A.D. Mitchell, who is now in the NFL, but went from Georgia to Texas and was able to make some plays for both. But I just remember that game. It was so. I think shocking was the word. Not that you thought Ohio State wasn't going to be in it, but the way they came out and C.J. Stroud and that offense kind of hit Georgia in the mouth. And it looked easy. And anytime it looks easy against a Kirby Smart coach defense at Georgia, it's always funny. It's weird to see that happen. But that was another fantastic game. And it's amazing. We talk about the Georgia defense and the Georgia defense. 2 of the games that you've highlighted already were absolute shootouts that Georgia found a way to win and couldn't stop anybody in those games.
I think C.J. Stroud made a lot of money that day.
Probably did. And you know what? It's a great decision by the Texans.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how good Ohio State was and how good that defense for Georgia was. You know how hard it must have been to score 41? You know how good you have to be to score 41 points against that 2022 Georgia defense who are running around killing people? What they did to Marvin Harrison Jr. in the back of that end zone, you do that now, you get thrown in jail.
Yeah. We all know there is huge sporting events coming up, and there's nothing like being there live and in person. But it's not just sporting events, concerts, any type of thing that you want to go to that sells tickets. Let me give you a special hint on the best place to find those tickets for the best price, where you can filter out all the fluff, and you can even see the view from your seat before you buy the ticket. That's with our friends over at Game Time. They totally take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Here in Nashville, we got the Preds, we got the Titans. There's country music concerts and concerts in general happening literally all of the time. So you need to go to your app store on your phone, laptop, whatever. Download the Game Time app, really easy to find. Create an account and use the code BOOSTER, BOOSTER, for $20 off your first purchase. Again, you just download the app from the App Store, create an account, use that redeem code BOOSTER for $20 off. Download Game Time. I'm telling you guys, if you'd like to go to events, doesn't matter what type of genre they are, this is the best apparatus to find the tickets for the best price, and you can get them up to an hour before the event. What time is it? It's always Game Time.
Talk about iconic head coaching matchups. How about when Urban Meyer and Nick Saban took on each other in the 2015 Sugar Bowl? Buckeyes beat Alabama 42-35. That was the inaugural season of the 4-team playoff.
Was that when Zeke went off?
Zeke went off, and remember, the Buckeyes were down to their 3rd-string quarterback. Remember, Braxton Miller got hurt preseason. J.T. Barrett had gone down. They're down to Cardell Jones, and they beat Cardell Jones led the Buckeyes to the Big Ten championship game of 59-0 over Wisconsin, something like that. But it was a Zeke fest. Remember the big Zeke run?
Well, that was the thing. We were like, all right, we were watching Ezekiel Elliott throughout the year. We're like, this guy's an incredible back. Can he run away from guys in the SEC the way he's running away from guys in the Big Ten? And you knew early, I think he popped off a run early, and you could see him really open up. That's when I was like, oh my goodness. And then don't forget at the end, what sealed it was Zeke taking
85
off on an 85-yard
through the heart of the South.
Was gone. That's why I was like, you want to talk about making yourself even more money. That was prime Zeke. That was, I mean, that team, you want to talk about stars on a team, on both of them. That was a hell of a game. That was a hell of a coaching matchup. But
You beat Nick Saban with a third-string quarterback.
that's one of the most impressive. Like,
Third string.
well, my thing is, how's that guy the third-string quarterback? How was Braxton?
Well, Joe Burrow, wasn't Joe Burrow the fourth string guy?
Yeah, my thing is, I know Braxton was a great athlete, but how are you not looking at Cardale Jones? Like, good God, watch this guy throw. He was throwing absolute missiles. But it was like he could throw the changeup, too. Like, it was, you want to talk about making some money, that Cardale Jones probably would have never had a chance to play in the league.
And remember, Dwayne Haskins, before they even got to the likes of Justin Fields and C.J. Stroud, like they
the quarterback run those guys been on.
It's insane. All right, 2022 Fiesta Bowl. We talk about this all the time. TCU beating Michigan 51-45. They were the largest underdogs to win a college football playoff game. I think they were 7.5-point dogs. Obviously, everyone remembers they go on to the national championship and lose to Georgia 65-7. But it doesn't take away from the fact that they got in the college football playoff after losing that Big 12 championship game to Kansas State, and they beat Michigan.
Yeah, and it validated them being in. Just like I think if SMU beats Penn State, it should validate them being in, but they won't win it all. Then people will just forget about the games they won and say they shouldn't have gotten in. That probably, to me, was the most shocking result in a college football playoff game. Well, it's been 4, and now we're going to 12. That one shocked me. And if you remember early, I think TCU had, 2 pick sixes in the first half? There was at least one early. Like, they needed to have so many things happen in a certain order to not only win the game, but just stay in the game, and they did. And then you started to see, you're like, well, TCU's kind of holding up against the run a little bit better than we thought, but it's those big plays early that gave them a belief. That one shocked me.
Remember the touchdown the touchdown that was called back from Michigan that was on like the 1-inch line, and then a fumble right after that, and then even on the first possession trying to run some sort of double.
It was just like
that TCU offense had some cats.
No, they did, but like everything that had to happen for TCU happens. Just sometimes it's written in the stars.
You know the most points that Michigan team gave up that year on defense?
Was it that game?
Well, yeah, other than that game, 23 points against Ohio State on the road.
Wow. All right, let's move on to the 2024 Sugar Bowl. Washington beat Texas 37-31. Steve Sarkisian had gotten the Longhorns into the college football playoff, obviously with that win in Tuscaloosa over Alabama, despite losing to Oklahoma during the year. But Washington undefeated, couple wins over Oregon, and Kalen DeBoer just put together a heck of a run to beat Texas and then go and play Michigan in the national championship.
He did, but it's weird. Like the thing the first thing that comes to my mind in that game, you know, outside of Penix out there slinging it, was like it felt like Washington kept almost giving it away. Like, didn't it seem like if I remember correctly, like Texas really shouldn't have had the opportunity at the end of the game to throw that ball in the end zone and win it, I believe. But Washington kept kind of giving them chances to come back. But I go back to that wide receiver room. I'm turning on NFL, even on teams that suck. Washington's wide receivers are balling.
Yeah.
Like you look at and not that the Bucs are bad, but like McMillan, right? This making plays. You look at Odunze. I know he's with the Bears, I believe, with Caleb Williams, but even he's still making plays. Then you got Polk that's making plays. Like that whole offense we talk about like the Joe Burrow offense. They were incredible. I wouldn't put that Washington offense ahead of them. Talk about Jalen Daniels and Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. You go back and look at who Washington had on that offense, and I think they won the Joe Moore Award.
Yeah, on offensive line, yep.
Offensive line, like the best offensive line of the year. That offense was stacked, buddy.
Well, Washington never trailed in that game, and Michael Penix Jr.'s numbers were 430 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns, no picks.
You know, Michael Penix had 4 games with over 400 yards passing.
That season?
That season.
Well, I'm just so ready to see him for the Falcons.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm interested in.
You're going to get your chance. All right, here we go. We got 2 more. The 2016 National Championship, Alabama defeats Clemson 45-40. Alabama was 13-1, met up with Clemson 14-0. This one was in Glendale, Arizona. The game featured 5 lead changes and several historic performances. Deshaun Watson broke the record for most total yards in a national championship game with 478. That was 405 passing and 73 rushing.
That was an incredible game. The thing that sticks out that I remember the most about that game is seeing the way that Clemson early in that game was able to move the ball against that Alabama defense, because you just really didn't see that a lot in that era. If you can go back to that time when Nick Saban had really monopolized the sport. So you're like, Clemson, they got some nice pieces. They got a couple of good pieces of fine china. But then early in the game, you're watching Deshaun Watson and this whole offense. Go back and look at that roster, and they're cooking. Now, they couldn't stop Bama on the other side, but they were cooking as well. You knew halfway through the first quarter this game was about to be elite. And didn't Clemson beat them the next year?
Yeah.
Is that the – sorry.
That's the next one. But in this one, Derrick Henry rushed for 158 yards, 3 touchdowns. And remember, Kenyon Drake helped seal victory for Alabama with that 95-yard kickoff return touchdown.
Yep. God, that was a hell of a game.
You'll never see 2 rosters like this ever again. I don't
Yeah, what, 40?
Complete roster.
40
I'm not
starters
talking about just one side.
Oh, it was insane.
Clemson had dogs on defense, too.
Oh, for sure. This was like the Clemson arc.
Yeah.
Like, they had been good before, but like this is when it was like, oh my God, like you guys are staying in the penthouse tonight in the Kapua suite?
Like you said, the next one, 2017 national championship game. Clemson defeats Alabama 35-31. Alabama was undefeated 14-0. Clemson was 13-1. For the second consecutive year, these teams faced off, and it really became the first rematch between number 1 and number 2 teams in the national championship game history.
Well, when Alabama and Clemson have played for a national championship, it's been a banger of a game. Now, I don't know if we're ever going to see that again. But and think too, the run that we talk about all these Alabama players, and we should, but the run that Clemson went on at quarterback for like that stretch of when they really upgraded themselves is absolutely elite. That's why people look at, like, Cade Klubnik's a really good quarterback, but like comparing him to the guys who came before him, it's ridiculous.
Was it a pick?
Just to clarify, it was the first rematch in consecutive years for number 1 and number 2.
Was it a pick play at the end, fellas?
No, it's a rub route.
Talking about the Hunter Renfro?
Was it a pick play?
Yes, it's technically a pick play, but there's pick plays that are legal if you do it right. It's just like,
did he do it right?
You're the wide receiver. You tell us.
I thought he did it right.
No,
but like,
I don't think there is
This is the argument about like, oh, well, you can't run a pick in football. Yes, you can. Just like you can run screens in basketball, but there's such thing as an illegal screen.
They're all picks and they're all timely blocking when it comes to
I think that one was
Most of them are
clean.
screens down the field.
That one was clean, and Deshaun Watson broke his own 2016 record that we were talking about for most passing yards in a championship game with 420.
And that was like, they ran like the ultimate every peanut butter and jelly vanilla pick play you run.
Roll
on, like,
out.
a 2-point play.
Roll out.
Roll out, up, pick, out.
I'll tell you one little funny story. Darby Lou and I had just met. We had just started dating, and she takes me to meet her father, Richard Todd, who played quarterback at Alabama. They were at a buddy of his house who played for Notre Dame, had the big green egg out, watching the championship game. So this is my first time meeting him, and Clemson beats Alabama in the national championship, and he was so nice the whole evening, just a great guy. I didn't realize until years later how much he was hurting inside. You see, like after we got married, you realize how invested he is watching Alabama play football, but he was on his best behavior that night despite the pain of losing.
Dude, one of the funniest national championship stories I have is I dated a girl in college that was from Colorado Springs. Flew out there to meet her family or whatever, and she had looked up, this is when Alabama was playing Notre Dame in the national championship game. Okay, that was Manti Te'o, all that stuff. They're getting ready to play. And I just really started coaching. And so she had looked up, hey, there's a national championship Notre Dame watch party at this sports bar in Colorado Springs. And she's like, you don't like Alabama, right? Why don't we go get like some Notre Dame stuff and wear it there and have a good time? So I'm like, okay. Because in the back of my mind, I know Alabama is going to beat their ass to death. Like, I just know what's going to happen before the game. But I thought it'd be fun to go experience that surrounded by Notre Dame fans and me pretend to be a Notre Dame fan. So, dude, there's still pictures on my Facebook. I got, like, the leprechaun hat. Like
you went all in.
Like a Notre Dame shirt. I'm showing up, and they're asking, like, everybody's introduced. I tell them I'm from Alabama. And they're like, hey, do we have a chance? I'm like, you guys got it. Like, you guys got the best chance, I think, out of anybody in the country. I'm like, don't be shocked if y'all win a low-scoring game. So I'm gassing them up. They're getting all excited. That ball kicks off. Doug, the first time Eddie Lacy ran the ball, and it was like, oh, my God! Like, the look on their faces, like, was just, they knew instantly. But it was a lot of fun. I mean,
That was a great.
I didn't even
Root
need
for
the
Al-
ball to get kicked off to know what was about to happen in that game. Alabama coming out of the tunnel was top 5 scariest things I've seen.
Why do you think Brian Kelly Brian Kelly decided to go to LSU in the tunnel before that game?
So what was the greatest game of these in the 4-team college football playoff era?
I know.
I would go Alabama Clemson when Clemson won in the last second pick play.
Okay,
So the rematch.
that was pretty historic.
I think that the Georgia-Ohio State game with C.J. Stroud and Stetson.
You think so?
That was such a phenomenal. There were so many big time. But listen, and again, you could choose so many, but like to me, you look at who was on that field, the way it ended. I mean, it was a fantastic.
If you just picked a semifinal game, that Georgia-Oklahoma game in the Rose Bowl,
there's a lot of similarities.
But
that Georgia
the national championship, man, Tua throwing that 41-yard game-winning strike, man, that'll be played forever.
Yep.
Definitely. Well, we want to know in the comments, which is your favorite? Is there one we didn't have on there? We need to add to the list. And make sure you're following all of us on X so you can keep up with the threads when they get posted. We hope you guys are having an incredible Christmas holiday or however you celebrated. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and we'll talk soon.